This is the Phuket News Hour with Tim Shaw. Join the conversation on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Phuket Live Radio.
Hello and welcome to the program. Lots of news about John Kerry, the US Secretary of State, visiting Singapore and Kuala Lumpur as part of a five-nation tour pushing through the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal. More debris found in those Indian Ocean islands. Are they part of the MH370 missing aircraft? A man who was charged with murder when he was a boy at 14 has been executed in Pakistan. The United Nations and human rights groups complaining of that outcome. More flights cancelled to Bali as a result of the erupting volcano Mount Ryung. The comfort woman of the Second World War. Why do the Japanese authorities still deny their existence? And we hear from Peter Lassa, who is a guest speaker at the Rotary Club of Patong on the 11th of August, about team building and the importance of that in your business. All this and more here on the Phuket News Hour, brought to you by the Kids Club Phuket. Stay tuned, lots of news on the way.
The news you need to know. This is the Phuket News Hour with Tim Shaw.
Looking at the stories in the news, in Virgin Australia and Jetstar have cancelled their flights yet again to volcanic ash due to the hazard from the Mount Ryung eruption. Now, Jetstar has cancelled 3 flights and 1 from Perth and delayed 2 flights in and out of Melbourne. The airline's only morning outbound flight from Melbourne to Bali has been delayed from 9:15 to 1:15. Apparently conditions are still unsuitable for flying because winds are highly unpredictable and are pushing volcanic ash back towards the airport. So just repeating that those flights in and out of Australia to Bali have been cancelled, noting too the Garuda and AirAsia continued to fly, even though the Australian Airlines had been warned not to and had chosen to delay and cancel their flights for a number of days. We'll keep following that story here on the Phuket News Hour. A disturbing story from the BBC that Pakistan has executed a man convicted of murder 11 years ago despite objections from human rights groups and the United Nations. Shafqat Hassan was found guilty of kidnapping and murdering a child in 2004. His lawyers says he was 14 at the time of his conviction and that his confession was extracted through torture by police, but authorities denied this. And as a result, the man, 11 years after being found guilty of murder at the age of 14, has been executed by the Pakistani authorities. The United Nations and human rights group intervention failed in that case. To Reunion Island, St Denis, investigators and volunteers are scouring the shoreline of Reunion in the Western Indian Ocean for more debris that could be linked to the missing Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. Now, objects are continuing to wash ashore on the island, and this is after that flaperon of an aircraft wing that has now been sent to France, and authorities have confirmed that it is from a Boeing 777 aircraft. But however, they still have not announced whether it's actually from missing flight MH370. But farther out to oceans, authorities on other islands, Mauritius and the Seychelles, say that they're also on the lookout for items bobbing in the waves. Even today, a small plastic item was found in the ocean. They thought initially that it may have been an aircraft window, part of the aircraft window, but it in fact looked and was identified to be part of a sewing machine. Expectations are heightened that with the Indian Ocean currents, that more and more debris may wash up on La Reunion Island and also in the surrounding islands, Mauritius and Seychelles, and that could bring us closer to identifying if this and all these items are from the MH370 missing aircraft. More news on the way. This is the Phuket News Hour on Live 89.5, brought to you by the Kids Club Phuket.
Missed something? No problem. Listen to the Phuket News Hour any time of the day. Programs posted daily on the phuketnews.com/radio and on our Facebook page, Phuket Live Radio.
US Secretary of State John Kerry is in the ASEAN region. He said this week that the 12 nations negotiating a massive Trade-Pacific Partnership deal have made good progress towards reaching a final agreement, but that some details remain to be worked out. John Kerry's in Kuala Lumpur as part of a 5-nations tour, and he had this to say to Voice of America, but particularly the TPP talks that wound up in Honolulu on Monday of this week failed to reach agreement. Let's get the response from the US Secretary of State to that.
As they met in Hawaii last week, trade ministers failed to agree on the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
As with any complex negotiation, I've watched them for years in the Senate, voted for them, may I say, for the trade agreements. There remain details to be hashed out.
At a Singapore university, Secretary Kerry said a finalized TPP deal could raise standards in other areas.
Under this pact, every participant will have to comply with core international labor and environmental standards. Every participant will have to refrain from using underage workers, unsafe workplaces.
Analysts say the impact of those additional benefits could be limited.
A trade deal's ability to influence human rights is around the edges. It's not a human rights agreement.
If implemented, the TPP would have a broad impact on global trade, affecting businesses ranging from the sugar industry to pharmaceuticals. But getting countries with competing interests on board will be a challenge, says Singapore analyst Deborah Elms, who spoke via Skype.
I think the real challenge is you have 12 countries with very different interests. Sometimes they're aligned, but many times they're not.
Ahead of the visit, a senior State Department official said Singapore was sort of the brain trust of Southeast Asia. The two countries share ties on a range of issues, including security and trade. Pam Dawkins, VOA News, Singapore.
What's interesting too with the latest trafficking in people report that Malaysia was shifted from Tier 3 to Tier 2, whereas the Kingdom of Thailand was left at Tier 3, particularly noting that since March the work of the Kingdom of Thailand to work against the trafficking in people didn't count because the report closed its reporting period in the March. What is noted is that Washington, as part of this TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, cannot do business with any nation that is on the Tier 3 level. So Malaysia whacked up to Tier 2 and John Kerry visiting Kuala Lumpur this week. This is the Phuket News Hour. More news on the way.
Your daily news fix, Monday to Friday at 11 a.m. Only on Live 89.5.
The Kids Club Phuket are the proud sponsors of the Phuket News Hour. This is the perfect place where kids can let their hair down and have a great time. It's located on the second floor promenade opposite the Jung Salong shopping centre. There's underground parking. The kids can have a fantastic time while mum, dad have a kid-free meal, go and do the shopping, have a massage, get your nails done, girls. Have a fantastic time as much as the kids will at the Kids Club Phuket. If you want to know more, call them on 076 341 310, thekidsclubphuket.com. Open 7 days a week. Check them out, facebook.com, The Kids Club Phuket, and great party suppliers too, facebook.com, TKC Party Supplies. What more do you need to know? The kids are going to have a ball at the Kids Club Phuket, proud sponsors of the Phuket News Hour.
Live 89.5, your island, your station, live.
A story from South Korea by the BBC. 70 years after the end of World War II, revisionism in Japan is growing stronger and becoming more mainstream. Now, some are identifying that Japan committed war atrocities, including forcing women into China, South Korea and Southeast Asia to be sex slaves for Japanese soldiers. This remarkable report by Rupert Wingfield Hayes of the BBC on why some in Japan continue to deny the existence of the so-called comfort women.
Every Wednesday, South Korean high school students gather outside the Japanese embassy in Seoul in silent protest. In their midst, the statue of another teenage girl. She's a symbol of the tens of thousands of young Korean women taken from here to serve as so-called comfort women, sex slaves for the Japanese military. Most were little older than these high school girls. Yi Oksun was just 15 when she was grabbed from the streets of Busan by two men, one Korean, one speaking Japanese.
I was forced on the train. Later, I realized we had crossed the border into China. I was sent to a place where there were other comfort women. I wonder why they called us comfort women. I was forced to have sex with many men each day. It was so horrible that some women killed themselves.
Most of the former comfort women have already died. These are statues of some of them, and there are now just a handful left here, like Lee Ok-sun, living in South Korea. Given the tremendous shame these women have had to overcome in order to tell their stories, it's hard to believe that anybody would still try to deny that those stories are true. But astonishingly, some people still do. And those deniers reach into the highest levels of Japanese society.
That report by the BBC, Rupert Wingfield Hayes, there talking about the women that were seconded into the provision of sex services during the Second World War. The story is great. You should watch it. I'll post it on facebook.com, the Phuket News for the Phuket News Hour. More news on the way here on Live 89.5, the Phuket News Hour, brought to you by the Kids Club Phuket.
Today's important stories and the island's best music. This is the Phuket News Hour with Tim Shaw.
In a story closer to home, the Rotary Club of Patong is having its weekly dinner the 11th of August in Patong, and their guest speaker is talking about the importance of team building in business. His name, Peter Laser. He's an international consultant and has worked all throughout Asia over a number of decades. Peter Laser, welcome to the Phuket News Hour. Tell us why team building within any business is so important to the future growth of that business.
It's pretty important these days because jobs are more than before multifaceted. That means they need expertise which is so multiple that it hardly can be found in one individual. Now, these individuals are all experts in their own field, and all of a sudden they need to work together, and more than often even globally. And being a little bit like prima donnas, they are used to be recognized individually. They need to be accredited individually. So the magic of team building is to make them work together, be in a position to deliver a joint result and be satisfied to be appreciated for the result jointly. That means people typically not being able to work together because of their individual strength all of a sudden need to function as a team, and this is the magic of team building.
Peter, is one of the problems, not just in Phuket or in the Kingdom of Thailand, but around the world, that some people within a business are afraid to ask for help?
That's precisely one of the questions, because asking for help is often considered as an expression of weakness, and in team building you take away this fear from people.
If people want to know more about the Rotary Club of Patong's guest speaker, Peter Laser, he's an international consultant. He is speaking at the next dinner meeting to be held in Patong on the 11th of August. Go to facebook.com, Rotary Club of Patong. Peter Laser, thank you for joining us on the Phuket News Hour.
Thank you so much for calling.
Your daily news fix, Monday to Friday at 11 a.m. Only on Live 89.5.
Thank you for listening to the Phuket News Hour. If you'd like to know more about Peter Laser, the international consultant guest speaker at the Rotary Club of Patong on the 11th of August, go to rotarypatong.org. This has been the Phuket News Hour, produced and presented by Tim Shaw using the resources of the BBC, Bangkok Post, the Voice of America, CNN and the Phuket News Centre. We look forward to your company here, 11 a.m. Monday through Friday and 6 a.m. Tuesday through Saturday on the catch-up program. And don't forget, PhuketLiveRadio.com, you can catch the podcast highlights. The Phuket News Hour, proudly sponsored by the Kids Club Phuket. Have a great day. Look forward to your company again soon. Bye for now.
This is the Phuket News Hour with Tim Shaw. Join the conversation on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Phuket Live Radio.